Welcome back to another video on the Jimmini Tech channel. And if you remember this bad boy PC from the last video we did, this started life as a $10 Dell Optiplex 7010 system. Now it's not a mini PC, but it is smaller than full tower. So I guess this would have been like the micro ATX form factor would be what I would most equate it to. And I picked it up and it was $10. I actually bought 4 computers for $40. This was probably, if I really want to be real about it, not even one that I cared about, but it was in there, so I decided to check it out. This one originally came equipped with an i5 3570. I have since upgraded it, and we'll be taking a look at that. But also, let's take a look at the beauty of the Jimmini Show jank. So what you're seeing here is a couple of mods. Number one, we upgraded the 3570 to a 3770K. That chip is overkill, especially for this board. You're just going to have to bear with me, and I'll explain why real quick. Number one, I got that CPU for $46 shipped. It's the same price as a 3770, so you might as well get the K, because if I stumble across like a really nice Z77 motherboard, like a Sabertooth, or one of those ones that's got like the armor on it, that would be a fun processor to put in there. So that was Z77 and I think Z75 chipsets were the third generation. Number two, I can sell the i5 3570 for like $20, so making that about a $25 upgrade. So if you recall, the original computer was $10 plus a few other things, so under $100 was the original upgraded build that I was playing with. I've added a few things. The CPU was the number one thing we're adding in this video. However, you'll notice that the 750 Ti is no longer inside the system. I added a PCIe riser card and a externally mounted bracket that came off of an old P3 that I had, or even a P1 Thermaltake, because these were part of it and I threw out the system. But I had, by the time I was done with those cases, I probably had like $20 in the both of these. You can get a PCIe extension off of Amazon for like $9. It won't be a branded one and it won't be one with coating on it, but it'll still work. And you can make your own bracket, just cut it off the back of a computer. So that was free. Still running the 750 Ti because the CPU is the first upgrade we're going to be doing to it. But I did add a Seasonic Prime 1000-watt PSU. This I got from a buddy when I bought one of his computers. I actually bought his case, and he gave me the PSU with it. However, he did not give me any Molex connectors for that PSU, so I've never used it in one of my water-cooled builds, because all of my water-cooled pumps, my D5s and my 755 pumps, all my adjustable pumps, they all use Molex for some reason. So I've never actually been able to use this PSU in anything. So I decided to throw it in here. You'll notice there's a little bit of damage here to the body. I had to take out the adapter. It actually has this thing that slides, and then you put in your PSU, and then it slides back into place. I got rid of it. I didn't care. I don't want it in there anyway. So I have an overkill PSU, overkill CPU, and a cheap 750 Ti still in here running as the graphics card. Quick note on the 750 Ti, if you need something super cheap and budget, and you can pick one of these up really cheap, I do not recommend any other 7 series card, because Kepler is no longer supported. However, this is a 750 Ti. It's got a 7 in the number, but that's just because the performance was more like the 7 series cards. However, this is actually a Maxwell-based card, so it's a 9 series chip. It's a Maxwell core, so it still gets updates, although the long-term prognosis for Maxwell is that it is going to eventually become a legacy card and lose its driver support. However, for right now, you can still get driver support and run Maxwell in a budget system. But what we're going to do now is we're going to power it up. We'll go into the BIOS. I'll show you that it is, in fact, a 3770K, although there's no reason to doubt me, but, you know, it's the internet, so maybe I'm faking it. Maybe this computer isn't real. Maybe it doesn't exist. While we're waiting for it to boot up, make sure to become a member of the channel, subscribe, all that good stuff, so that we can keep growing. And we're going to keep doing the filming off of the screenometer, because, damn it, I love it. So here in the system information, you'll see it still has 32 gigs of RAM at 1600 megahertz. But if we scroll down, you will see that it is now running the i7 3770K at 3.5 gigahertz. This board is so locked down that it's only allowing it to go to 3.5 gigahertz, and I can't bump it up. I've actually tried doing things like throttle stop, and no matter what I apply, it does not work. So unfortunately, 3.5 gigahertz is all we're getting. However, we did move from a 4-core, 4-thread CPU to a 4-core, 8-thread CPU. So we have effectively doubled the thread count for the CPU, as well as added more cache. Additionally, if you're not running SSDs in your computer in 2023 going into 2024, set your abacus down, walk away from it, contact me, and I'll build you a computer, because my gosh, if you're running spinning platters in 2023 for anything other than Steam libraries or large video storage, you're insane. Here we have 3770K running at a locked 3.5 gigahertz because I have CIE or C1E states turned off, as well as speed stop. So it's just boosting as high as it can get, and it just locks in there. This chip will run at about 60 degrees because one of the biggest problems we're having with it is that this motherboard is not designed to handle a K SKU. I'm actually honestly surprised that it booted with the 3770K, because I don't know if it was even validated with that CPU. I believe there are ones out there with the 3770T or the low power variant of the chips, but this one has the K variant, which is impressive. Look in here and I'll make the picture bigger. This is our biggest problem. You can see this thing right now under idle and boot up is only hitting 25.5 watts. This chip is much more than 25 watts. Yeah, 25 watts, especially when it's overclocked. So that's going to be a problem. I've already run a Cinebench to see if the power supply, or actually the power phases on the motherboard, can handle it. But since it's only boosting to a max, I believe, of 44 watts or 45 watts, it's plenty for this thing. This score will be a little bit lower because it's still booting systems, I think. So it returned to 614, originally did a 620. I believe it ran a 622 at one point, but that one didn't save. However, you'll see that a 3770 non-K processor managed a 682 or 662, pardon me. That means that this motherboard is holding back this CPU. And I did try throttle stop. You can see it's right there on the dashboard. But it, unfortunately, just can't overclock past 3.5 gigahertz. So you're locked to a 3.5 gigahertz processor, which is, I believe, actually 300 megahertz lower than the i5 was boosting to. But with more threads, it's able to power through. So 150 points over 470. So it's a 30% increase in the score. Now we're going to go ahead and do the same Firestrike to see what the combined score winds up being, because the CPU, again, is a much better CPU. And then we'll dive back into Spider-Man. And I know you guys are like, oh, he didn't do that many different tests. The main reason is, with this graphics card, we're not going to get a lot of graphics tests. With the small SSD I have in there, I'm only putting one game on that SSD. I do have, again, a spinning Rust hard drive for a Steam library, but I just don't want to do a bajillion tests. I'm just showing you that if you invest a little bit of time and a little bit of money, you can have like a bare minimum gaming system that will get you by for a little while. I can tell you that programs are loading faster, especially 3D Mark and Steam games are loading faster, because the very simple reason that it's got a lot more threads and a lot more power. Again, it's running 30% faster than the original system for what equates to a $25 outlay. I'm going to run this test and then I'll come back. 5214 and a 9058. I actually don't think that is much different from what we had before. Let me look at the other results I had. Look at that. I'm better than 13% of all results. I'm still awesome. But we'll pull this up. Look at my history of results. 3D Mark, Firestrike. So we went from a 45.24 to a 47.12. So we went up basically 200 points, which is about a 5% difference. But what I'm looking at is the combined score. Physics score went from 6,540 to 9,058. So a 2,500 point uptick right there. However, the GPU is limiting us quite a bit in the score upgrade, because a 25% uplift in performance on the CPU, but only a 5% uplift in the overall score means that the GPU is the stopping point. But let's see if a game runs any better now that we have 25 to 30% more performance out of the CPU. If you recall, we were hitting between 23 and 25 FPS before. Let's see what happens when we jump around the city a little bit. You'll have to forgive me, my hands don't work very well. I'm going to do the same run I did last time, which is to hit some big buildings. No, see, we're hitting over 30. Last time we were hitting barely 29, and it just wasn't working that well. Yeah, 33, 37 when we're looking up. That's pretty good. I can tell you that, at least in the less intensive scene that I'm running right now, we are definitely seeing an uptick. But let's see what happens when we get all the way to the top of this. Hey. Ow. Still looks like a game from PS3, but we are running closer to the 30 FPS. Yeehaw. So we're going to go ahead and shut it down, and I'm actually going to go ahead and install a graphics card upgrade. And that graphics card that we're going to be running today is a GTX 980. I have two other cards that I'm willing to try, but I figured a 980 would be a nice compromise. 4 gigs of VRAM, which honestly is not really enough in 2023, but it's better than a 2 gig card with a slow core. It's also why I installed this bracket on the outside of the case so that I could easily upgrade the card. That plus the motherboard design does not actually allow for long cards in there. I butchered the hell out of the inside of the case in order to make it work. But this is just a plug and play affair, so we do this. Crank that thing down. Founders cards, or reference cards, as this one actually is, are available on eBay for about 70 bucks, shipped 60 bucks. You can even win them in auctions. I got this one a super long time ago in a bundle deal with an X99, and I sold the motherboard that came with it. So I actually have nothing into this graphics card. But again, let's call it a $60 upgrade. So we have 40 and 60. So now, without selling our original parts, we are at a build that comes in at about $200. And let's be clear, I can fit most 2-slot cards in this case, no problem. It wasn't designed for it. There are some USB, or excuse me, SATA cables that could be compromised doing it, but it would work. So if you, again, need a super budget system, you can do this. But what I'm going to do real quick is I am going to DDU the driver, re-download it, and install it, because I like a fresh driver download every time I replace a graphics card. It's just a better bet, in my opinion. Now that we've stepped up to a GTX 980, which again is not a huge jump, as they are both Maxwell cards, you will see there is a significant jump in performance. Now this GTX 980 is a reference card, not a Founders Edition, because they were called reference cards back then. But it's a reference card that I have only overclocked to 1350. Now, GTX 980s of this time period could run at about 1400 megahertz. However, this one is a little bit older, and I'm not sure if she's still capable of running that hard. I have a 250 megahertz overclock on the memory, though. And we're just going to let it run through. It's getting up there in temperature already. Being that it's basically outside the system should allow it to get plenty of fresh air. So at 65% or 70% fan load, it should stay cooler than if it was inside the system blowing this way. I still expect to see about 70 to 72 degrees. And I'm not being disappointed because it's already at 66. However, our FPS is more than double what it was before. Well, lo and beholdies, we have a score of 14,197 for the graphics, 9,061, so it stayed about the same for the physics, which you're going to see, which is the CPU score. And then you have a combined score of 4,843 with a fire strike score of 11,107. Let's put that into perspective, shall we? It moved us up to 55% from 13% of all scores, so that's good. But when you looky here, it's a jump from 4,700 to 11,100. That is 6,400, more than 100% increase. We're talking about a 115, 120% increase in terms of what we wound up with. Looking at that, like I said, that one was the one with the graphics score of 14,197. This one had a graphics score of 5,214, so nearly triple the performance, so 150% increase. What does that do for gaming, though? Let's find out by loading Spider-Man once again. Let's have an unskippable logo. Anybody watch the season 2 of Loki? Really good show. I think it's over now, though. Now remember, with the 750 Ti and the i7, it was struggling to hit 30. Let's see what it does with a 980 and the 3770K. Oh, so much smoother. So 52, 43, and these are the exact same things I was doing last time. You can see it's visually a lot smoother, although it is still PS3 looking, Xbox 360 Superman Return style. Let's go to this building, this building right now here. Looking all the way down there, we got some rain going on. There's a helicopter. Anywhere from 50 all the way up to about 70 FPS. Let's increase some graphical settings and see what happens. Let's go to low. Actually, let's go to medium. Think that'll work? So we've managed to jump up to a medium setting, and we're at least hitting 30 FPS, which is at least the goal. I never want to hit lower than 30 FPS. Graphics card is actually not hitting full speed because we are still being blocked off by the CPU. So let's see. Yeah, it's looking better. You can see textures on the suit look better, reflection-ish style looks better, and we're still getting in the anywhere from 40 to 60 range. If I had to play it at this resolution or at this FPS, I could, because it's still better than an old PS3. We have one more graphics card that I am wanting to try. However, we're going to be saving that for another video. But let's go ahead and break down our final costs on our first round of upgrades. Our first upgrades were the 3770K and the power supply, which wound up running us about an extra, well, like I said, because I got that one for free, but a 1,000-watt power supply is going to run you about $120, so don't do that. That's stupid. You can get a 500-watt like Corsair or Cooler Master power supply much cheaper. I threw a 1,000-watt power supply in because that's what I had. But the CPU was $46, but I could sell the i5 3570 for $25, making that about a $21 upgrade. The GTX 980, if you get a reference card like this one, again, they're between $60 and $70. But if I sold the 750 Ti, I could probably get $30 to $35, making this a $40 upgrade. So between the two of those, you're talking about an extra $65 on top of our original 100 and no, actually, originally it was a $100 system with the 750 Ti, the old 430-watt power supply, and the i5. So you're at about 165, say 40 for a good power supply. So $205 right now. We're at $205 for a system that can play games like Spider-Man at over 30 FPS. You can definitely play games like Fortnite, Roblox. Those all will play fine on here. Games like Forza Horizon 5 would play at about 30 FPS as well. I've used this card on my other system, and I know that on a 12900K, the 980 is still capable of pushing out closer to 80 frames at 1080p, but with a still substantial bottleneck using the 3770K on this motherboard, we are, like I said, probably expecting about a 30 to 35 FPS experience. If you like this video, make sure to come back for more. Still doing more tech on the channel, and I thought this one would be an interesting one to do. So leave me a comment, questions, all that stuff. Come back for the next one, and as always, I'll talk to you later.